Okay, this is Brother Wolf, and this is HS 345. Today we have this is section 3, and we have group number 4, who's going to present case study 3. That's a lot of 3s and 4s. But I will just turn it over to the group and let them start when they're ready.
Okay, this is case study number 3, and we are group 4. So our case overview, it looks like this. The Rio Grande Medical Center is a full-service, not-for-profit acute care hospital that has 325 beds. It is 100,000 square foot, and there are 2 sections of this hospital. 80% of the space is dedicated to the outpatient services, and 20% is dedicated to the dialysis department. These are the current allocations for each of the clinics, and you can pause it if you need to. And these are the 2 departments' P&L statement summaries. So the outpatient clinic has created a need for 25% more space than they currently have because they're growing. And so they have decided to move the dialysis center to another location, and this move would create additional space that's needed for the outpatient clinic. The new dialysis center will occupy 20,000 square feet, and the cost per square feet for the new center is $120 per square foot. And then the total construction costs would be $4 million. The costs for the new facility will be financed with a 20-year mortgage loan with a 7.75% interest rate. And the costs for the new clinic will result in $400,000 annual cost. And that is a $100,000 increase from what they were paying before the move. So the department heads have decided to change the way they work bonuses. And they've decided to change the bonuses based from direct costs to the department's contribution of the hospital's bottom line, the profit the department brings to the hospital. The department head of the dialysis department has concerns with that change in policy because it will affect his bonus. And so the $100,000 indirect costs of the move will increase those facility costs, and with no additional revenue planned, the facility is forecasted to have a loss of $70,000. The outpatient clinic, on the other hand, will have a revenue increase and will also increase in profit. So with the implementation of the new bonus policy, the dialysis department will not be eligible for the bonus.
So question 1 is it fair for the dialysis center to suffer improfitability from the move even though it has nothing to do with it? And we do not believe that it's fair for the dialysis center to incur the full cost of the move to accommodate the needs of the outpatient clinic. When we analyze the data, the outpatient clinic, with its 25% increase, their revenue will grow from $16 million to $20 million, with an increase of their net profit of $841,000. With the dialysis clinic not anticipating any growth, their revenue will stay the same at $2.7 million, and with the increased square footage overhead costs, the dialysis clinic is projected to have a loss of $100,000.
Okay, question 2. Should the dialysis center be charged actual facilities costs for its new location? We say no. We do not believe charging the dialysis center for actual facilities costs is fair. The facility can't cover those costs, and charging it by the actual cost puts it in the red. Because the CEO will only allow us to allocate overhead costs within outpatient services, we fear We feel the fairest thing to do is to share the facilities costs between the dialysis center and the outpatient clinic. Both of them benefit from the move. Dialysis center gets a new facility with better access, which could attract more patients, and the outpatient center gets more square feet, which would increase revenues. If they share the costs, they both make a profit. And in the next slide, we show how that's done, how we allocated those costs. As you can see, we added up the total square feet that both of them have, and we got 120,000 square feet. And then we found the total cost for both, and then we found the percent that of the total square feet that they used, so we could figure out the cost allocation based on that. And then we found out the new average of the facility's cost is $15.83.
So question number 3 has 2 parts. First part is, even if the true cost concept were applied to the dialysis center, is the $400,000 annual allocation amount correct? And we believe, based on the future value calculations that you can see here, that the $400,000 is an accurate annual allocation. Next. And then the second part, the true cost concept is what would be the allocation in the 21st year after the mortgage has been paid off. Well, under the new accounting system, allocation is based on facility costs, which is building depreciation and the interest on the loan. So if the loan is paid off after 20 years, then we can conclude that the allocation amount will be 0 for the indirect costs.
So question 4, as John, the head of the dialysis center, was reviewing it, he was looking at the pharmaceutical supplies, and he found that they book $800,000 in annual revenue, but it's also charged $800,000 for the drugs that they're used. And as he dug farther into it, he found out that the pharmacy department, the cost of the drugs cost them $400,000, and so the pharmacy department was making a $400,000 profit on the drugs that were sold by the dialysis clinic. And so the question was, should the $800,000 pharmacy revenue be counted when general overhead allocations are made? And if we believe that if the pharmacy is receiving a profit from the sale of the drugs, that should be included on the profit and loss statement for the pharmacy department. With that change, it reduces the dialysis center total revenue from 2.7 to 1.9 million, which will change the percent of the general overhead costs. That change will increase the profits of the dialysis center from 30,000 to 110,000. And we included the profit and loss statements for status quo on the left here, and on the right, they are without the pharmaceutical supplies. And you can see the general overhead costs are 190,000, which is 10% of the total revenue, which shows an increase from the net profits from 30,000 to 110,000.
Okay, so the alternative allocation decision that we came to is limited because the CEO will only allow us to change overhead allocation within outpatient services. So we based it off of problem 2, how we distributed the facilities costs between both departments. So to do that, we did that to create more fairness. The dialysis center is accommodating the outpatient clinic, so both should help pay for the cost of building. We feel this alternative is better than the initial allocation the old CFO made for 2 reasons. The outpatient clinic still increases its profits with the move, but the dialysis center loses profits but is no longer in the red. It will be in the black. And we show that on the next slide. As you can see on the far right is our alternative allocation. It's the facilities costs are what is different. So that changes our total overhead. And so our net profit is $13,000, which is better than having an initial allocation a negative $70,000 loss. And so at our next department heads meeting, we would push the CEO to change the $800,000 pharmacy revenue and put it with the pharmacy and take it out of the dialysis center's total revenues. And that would look like the next slide. On the far right, we did that allocation, and as you can see, our total revenues are less for the dialysis center and the direct expenses are less. We use the facilities cost from our alternative allocation, and our general overhead is less because it's 10% of our new total revenues. And so then we would get a net profit of $90,000, which is 3 times what it was before the move, which was $30,000. And finally, at the department head meeting, we would also push the CEO to change the cost drivers for indirect costs, lumping most of the indirect costs into general overhead and then allocating it based on 10% of revenues does not create incentives to reduce costs and is unfair because it doesn't reflect actual utilization of the overhead. So we would recommend allocating administrative costs based on 10% of revenue, using number of bills generated to allocate finance costs, using number of maintenance labor hours to allocate maintenance costs, and using number of housekeeping labor hours to allocate housekeeping costs. And we feel that changing these cost drivers would reduce overhead costs because the managers would have incentive to reduce their overhead costs. And that was it.
Excellent. Very well done. I don't want to comment too much on the content because I want the other group to present, and then a lot of that discussion can take place when in the discussion board. But I would like to comment on kind of the style of the presentation, not just for you, but for the whole class. I think this was very well done. I really appreciate the fact that you had slides that showed P&Ls and other statements that you didn't necessarily have to focus on too much in the presentation, but they were there for reference, and people can, like you mentioned, you can pause the presentation, look at those slides. I'll ask this group as well to post their slides in the discussion board. I will post the recording there, obviously, and then they'll help you engage in comparing to the other group, as well as answering questions and those sorts of things. Before I started the recording, we had a brief discussion just kind of on the intent of how this works, and one of the members mentioned they had an aha moment. I just wanted to reiterate that you have this week to be reviewing both presentations as a class and to be engaged in the discussion board, and you can, when you submit, when those who aren't in groups are going to be submitting written analysis, which is essentially answering these questions, you can utilize, and you should be utilizing, the thoughts and the opinions of either group or both groups so that you can come up with the best analysis in your mind. So again, there's not necessarily one right way to do this, but just to kind of defend and justify and rationalize the decisions you're making and why you chose one way or the other. Out in the real world, so to speak, you'll get some of that direction. Certain organizations will have philosophies on how they do these kinds of allocations. This exercise is to teach you to do it either way, to make these decisions. And when you get out there and start working and you're in an organization, they typically have policies and procedures that they say, look, for our organization, we like to do it this way. But very, very well done, very clear, and I appreciate the slides and the thoughtfulness that you put into this, so thank you very much. Do you have any comments or questions before I let you go?
No, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much. Great job, and we'll kind of continue all this in the discussion board. Thank you.
Thank you.